One's it's special to me because this was the first fly I ever tied. An older fellow I worked with for years, he showed me this and got me kind of into the sport of fly fishing, and then I came and joined the club. He was never part of the club, to my knowledge, but he knew about it. So this fly,
Hornberg?
I know it as the Coalnut Special.
As the what?
The Coalnut Special.
Coalnut.
Coalnut Special, just because the guy's name was Coalnut. So he showed me how to tie this fly. It works great and it holds up.
That hackle, that feather is Hornberg. That's what I said. Hornberg.
It's a mallard flank. So, yeah.
So this is a secret pattern that you're actually going to share with everybody else?
This is well, it's a semi-secret pattern. There's other variations of it online. I know it is the Coalnut Special. And I know it works, and it will hold up to a pike. I've caught multiple pike on the same fly before I had to change it. And it's quite surprising because it's just a couple feathers.
Yep.
So again, I like my size 6 hooks. In this case, I just use a stinger hook for this fly. It doesn't need to be 4x long or anything crazy. So I've got one of them in the vise here. And this time I'm going to use a red thread. I'm just going to tie it in place. And this one I use on lakes all the time. I haven't really used it in the rivers and streams, but that's just because Curtis always used it in the lake, and he said use it in the lake. So I didn't bother with changing that. I know it works great. So I add a little bit of weight to it just to get it down. And this is just some lead wire. You can pick whatever size you want. It's all going to be buried inside the fly. And you want just a little bit of it, and you want it near the front of the fly. So once I get this wrapped, I'm going to push it up. And the point of having it near the front of the fly is fish lead with their head. If you have the weight up near the front, if you stop pulling on this fly, you want it to dive a little bit. But at the end, I'm also going to tie some eyes onto it that will really accentuate that. So I've got just a little bit of lead in there. I'm going to tie to the back end of the fly again. I'm going to take some bucktail again, but this time it's going to be red. I'm just going to place it along the back of the fly to show up as veins within the tail as it's swimming. So you don't need a whole lot of these. It's just there to kind of poke through every once in a while. And as with the other fly, try to pull all their under fur out. So this one I want to kind of match to the length of my hook. A little bit more than that's not a big deal, but with a size 6, that seems to work nice when I put that feather on there. So kind of spread it out. There's some extra hair. Just chop it off. And for the body, because this one is predominantly a pike fly, they seem to like red. So the underbody is just going to be a scarlet chenille. So you can just take a length off there, cut it if you want. When I started out, I didn't have a whole pile of materials, so I tried to save everything. And I would tie it with the bobbin in place, and that's just how I got used to it. And then I got this fancy vise, and I can kind of cheat and tie it in place and snip it off when I'm ready. Just want to make a quick body, and I want to leave room at the head there to work with, so I don't crowd the eye too much when I'm trying to tie feathers in and the barbell eyes. Just make sure that's in place. And I'm going to take some mallard flank. Try to find two matching feathers that point towards one another when you hold them together. And when you get a fresh bag of this, usually not so hard to find, but after you've used a few of them, you might have to dump the whole bag out and try to find a few. And I might have to do that because I've gone through this one a couple times.
Gary Hankey has a procedure
He's got a trick to it.
Yep.
Okay. I'll have to talk with him at some point. I pick through them. Try to find two about the same length. And when I tie them in, they're going to face one another. But like I said with the other fly, all this fuzzy stuff isn't any good for us. So we're going to try to pick that off before we tie it in place. Don't pull too much of your feather back, but definitely get all the stuff off the bottom. And it gives you a nice stem to tie to. So you just line that up along the side of your fly. Hold it in place. Lock it in, and one feather's in place. So then you take your other feather, strip it as well. It should line up and match the other feather fairly well. We lock it in place. And it looks pretty bland that way. The trick that Mr. Coalnut taught me was find another feather about half the size of the other ones. And this feather is what's going to keep your body apart and swimming when it's in the water. Take it, put it between the two feathers. And this is kind of the only real tricky part to this fly, is try to get it down the center, hold it, and you lash that in place. Once it's in place, you can kind of play with the feathers till you get them to line up the way you want them. And once you tie it, you can run it underwater and it'll make the feathers do a little more of what you want, but you just got to get it half close, so they want to lay over top of each other and that center feather's in the middle. And we'll snip all the ends off, but if you're playing around and things want to move, you didn't put enough wraps of thread in there, which I found on this one I did, so play with them, get them where you want them, hold them, and we'll lash it in place again. And then they should quit moving. Take it back, snip all of our stems off. And we'll build a bit of a head up. And I forgot these today, but thankfully Dennis had one. Just some barbell eyes. You can fish the fly as it is, but like I said, I like to fish these in lakes. The more weight you can get on the front, the better. And barbell eyes kind of finish it off anyway. They look rather sharp on here, so you try to lay it over the top. I'm not sure if I can show this. Over the top of the hook, and then you're going to want to figure 8 with your thread through it. It'll lock it in place. So I'll do 1 or 2 passes just to get it in there. So I go over the one side, and I go over the other side. It kind of centers it for you, and then you can just do whatever you need to lock it in place. It's kind of weird with the camera, for me anyway. So what I'm coming to on this one is I put it a little too far forward. It's crowding my eye when you see it. Try to put them a little further back. If you're tying it at home, you'll find out, make your life a lot easier. So in this case, instead of whip finishing in the front, I'm just going to do it behind because I got it on there. Take the whip finishing tool, put her in place. Good. So last step, you have all these little pieces of feather coming off. Just kind of pull them out. Try not to pull too much of your body apart, because you'll find if you keep pulling on them, new ones will keep coming up, and eventually just pull your body apart and you'll want to throw it out. But again, last step, just take some head cement, put it on there to lock your knot in place.